let's have a discussion about the files, slider, stream, and elements that are crucial for our project. The slider file contains a description of sliders that can be utilized to adjust the values of specific parameters within an already running model of the system. The file consists of the global setting and the slider setting. In the global setting, we specify the number of sliders, and in the slider setting, we describe each of them. Let's talk more about setting up the slider. In it, we will describe the slider's name in the setting name. In the context, we will indicate the parameter that will be modified by this slider control. In the minimum and maximum settings, we will specify the minimum and maximum values, respectively, that can be set using this slider. In delta setting, we'll specify minimum value, by which parameter can change with slight movement of slider. File.stream. The working title of this file is lines. In the file, you can specify objects and their various characteristics, such as the electric or magnetic field created by the object and the magnetic potential. It is also possible to define surfaces and their position in space, shape. This particular file contains multiple settings for global, segment N, and surface N. In the global setting, you can specify the number of elements, such as wires, rings, lines, segments, disks,
and surfaces. They will correspond to the fields wires, rings, lines, segments, disks, balls, and surfaces. In the nth segment N setting, you have the option to configure the nth segment according to your preferences and requirements. This allows you to customize and fine-tune the settings for that specific segment, ensuring optimal performance and tailored functionality for your needs.
First, let's give a name to the segment in the name field. Next, we will set the field type. There are three options to choose from. I, electric, electric field, B, magnetic, magnetic field, and BP, magnetic potential. Next, we'll set the initial coordinates of the segment along the X, Y, and Z axes in the fields X0, Y0, and Z0. Next, we will set the final coordinates of the segment along the X, Y, and Z axes, respectively in the fields X1, Y1, and Z1. Next, in the fields No Lines and No Angles, we will specify the number of lines and angles respectively. In the tolerance field, we'll specify acceptable deviations from the nominal value, and in the interval field, for placing segments. In the end segments field, indicate the number of segments, and in the color field, the color of the segment. In the label field, you can specify whether to display the segment or not. In the end surface setting, you have the option to configure the end surface. When declaring the setting, it is necessary to specify the surface number. Numbering starts from 0. Let's start by setting. Indicate the name in the name field. Subsequently, specify the size of the surface in the size field. Next, in the min-x, min-y, min-z, max-x, max-z, and max-z fields, let's specify the surface constraints along the x, y, and z axes. Within the type field, you have the ability to specify the surface type, such as point, for instance. In the x0, y0, and z0 fields, you can set the initial coordinates of the surface along the x, y, and z axes. In the color field, you have the option to set the color. In the opacity field, you can specify the transparency of the surface by entering a number ranging from 0 to 1. Within this file, you have the capability to incorporate 3 stereometry figures into the design, Make adjustments to their length and position according to your preferences and requirements. This document contains various global settings and also includes box end, sphere end, and cylinder end for different purposes and configurations. Let's consider the global setting. Here you can adjust the following parameters for boxes, spheres, and cylinders. In these settings, you need to specify the number of boxes, spheres, and cylinders respectively. The settings for box end, sphere end, and cylinder end all have the same parameters.
Let's examine them closely.
In the length X, length Y, and length Z fields, you need to specify the length along the X, Y, and Z axes respectively. In the X, Y, and Z fields, you need to specify the coordinates of the center along the X, Y, and Z axes respectively.
X, Y, Z.
In the fields rotate X, rotate Y, and rotate Z, you need to specify the angle of rotation around the X, Y, and Z axes. The color field is responsible for the color of the shape. For example, if you enter 0, 255, 0, the shape will be green. The opacity field is in charge of determining the transparency of the shape. It needs to be specified as a numerical value within the range of 0 to 1.